As a longtime Yu-Gi-Oh player, I've always found it helpful to compare my Yu-Gi-Oh experience with the ways that I interact with and enjoy other games, including other card games and video games. Yu-Gi-Oh can sometimes be a frustrating experience, and I'm not the best player in the game. My budget isn't unlimited, but more importantly, my time isn't unlimited either. For years, I've tried to moderate how much time I play based on a simple calculation. Am I getting enough enjoyment out of Yu-Gi-Oh, given the amount of time, effort, and money that I've put into the game? To be clear, this video is not about my disappointments with Yu-Gi-Oh, but instead about what I found useful in my attempts to make the game more fun for myself. If you find yourself in a similar situation where you're getting more frustration out of the game than enjoyment, I hope you'll find this video and the following pieces of advice useful. Above all, I want to maintain a healthy attitude about the game, and contextualizing Yu-Gi-Oh using my favorite video games has been surprisingly effective in that effort. So let's talk about a few of the games that are helping me stay grounded in Yu-Gi-Oh. Since 2014, I've been spending the majority of my free time in the Destiny 2 universe, a self-described action MMO from Bungie. It's been my primary video game for the last 7 years, alongside Warframe and more recently, Genshin Impact. So what's the connection to the Yu-Gi-Oh hobby? Well, it's about perspective. Playing games with a mix of cooperative and also player versus player elements has helped highlight the things that I love about Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck building, strategizing, solving puzzles, and the things that I don't like. The IRL loot box experience of opening packs, the monetary investments, tournaments, and the competitive play space that's often disconnected from the wider casual audience. The following are all lessons that I've developed to try to help me improve my Yu-Gi-Oh experience by recognizing what I like best about my favorite games. First, we'll talk about the competitive experience. Lesson 1. You don't need to play the best cards. The urge to have the newest or best cards in the game affects everyone. And let's face it, losing rarely feels better than winning, and having better cards gives you more opportunities to win. Yes, Yu-Gi-Oh has plenty of budget strategies that can hold their own, but they're almost always less forgiving, harder to play, and more conditional on local metagames and tournament environments. All else being equal, you're more likely to have success with a deck that costs $1,000 versus one that costs $100. When it comes to strictly winning or losing, having access to the best cards is an advantage too powerful to give up. But Yu-Gi-Oh isn't about topping a locals each week, scoring your WCQ invite, or topping a YCS. In a gacha game where characters and equipment are unlocked by chance, and this includes games like Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, part of the fun is building strategies around what you have rather than dwelling on what you don't. The ideal weapon or character might not have landed in your lap yet, or, again, to continue the Duel Links analogy, the ideal card or skill, but maybe there's another combination of items in your possession that can get the job done. It's a bit like puzzle solving. You're trying to solve the same puzzle as other players, but you have different clues. They can all lead to the same solution, but how you go about it is a little different. Resisting the urge to buy the latest tech card, buying the new deck that's sweeping the OCG, and instead sticking with low-budget options for your own existing builds is a difficult but incredibly important part of maintaining budget discipline in this game, and plenty of other free-to-play games that are out there on the market right now. It's not as much fun, but your wallet will thank you, and you'll keep your sanity when it comes to RNG on packs or loot boxes. Lesson number 2. Working with your fellow players is more fun than working against them. Competitive gaming spaces inherently possess a certain level of toxicity. In every match, at least one player is guaranteed to walk away the loser and the other the winner, ignoring ties, of course. Competitiveness can sometimes manifest undesirable characteristics, including elitism, arrogance, and a selfish attitude towards newcomers. It's easy to start associating your self-worth by your performance in anything, your job, your relationships, and even your skill at games. Losing games can become a soul-crushing experience as your practice and investments barely help you survive against the latest competitive deck. Yu-Gi-Oh isn't worth getting upset over, no game is. But it's hard to keep your ego in check sometimes. If you're like me, you might get the impression that after so many years of playing and so much money invested, you should win more duels. That's obviously the wrong idea to have, but the effect it has on you is real. In a gacha game, the feeling of not performing well can make you question if your performance is simply a matter of investment. If I only had this card or more time to no-life the game, I'd do better. It's a trap that many of us fall into. Zeroing in on competitive success is the quickest way to burn yourself out and possibly put a dent in your savings, but an alternative. Helping your fellow players is a great non-competitive exercise that keeps you involved in the game without the strict win-lose duality of tournament play. When your friend desperately wants to make a new, maybe casual theme work, instead of suggesting that they spend their time on an alternative, more meta strategy, maybe try lending them a hand and build the best possible version of that deck. You have a bunch of friends who meme about Beaver Warrior OTK, challenge them to build that same deck. Look for ways to meet newer players on their terms by keeping a casual deck on standby, or even a pair of Go format decks. Helping players beat rewarding content in video games is its own source of enjoyment, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Has plenty of that too, if you know where to look. Lesson number 3. It's okay to take breaks. Burnout can crush your desire to play any game, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Is no exception. Taking breaks is crucial, especially in a game like Yu-Gi-Oh! Where FOMO, or fear of missing out, isn't as severe. Cards will eventually be reprinted in the future, and existing cards won't suddenly vanish from the secondary market. Taking breaks does come with its own challenges, however. Returning to the game means learning new strategies and tech choices before jumping right back into the competitive scene. It's not a huge problem, unless your first tournament in a year is a Regionals or a YCS, but the bigger problem with returning to the game might be its impact on the value of your collection. Again, there's no issue with taking a break as long as you're not over-invested in the game. But after a year or two, you might discover that the cards you bought are now valued at a fraction of the former price. And the opposite is also true. Players who invested in Ultimate Rares are returning to the game to discover that the value of their collections has more than tripled since they stopped collecting. Ultimately, the decision to liquidate your collection is up to you. Cards have more meaning than their secondary market value attached to them, and don't feel like you need to keep playing and spending money. Lesson number 4. Don't spend what you can't afford. Speaking of spending money, I can't overstate enough just how important it is that you set a budget for yourself in Yu-Gi-Oh! That budget might not be just a budget in terms of monetary investment, it might also be time. It's not just a problem in the realm of card games. Video games have increasingly leveraged psychological tools to encourage players to spend more in their games. These methods are often exploitative, and the parallels to gambling are real enough that many countries have passed laws restricting the use of mechanics like loot boxes. Trading card packs exist in a morally gray area. I'm not particularly interested in engaging in that argument today, at least not in this video. Buying packs can still trigger the kind of psychological response akin to gambling, but the secondary market can be just as dangerous. Again, the desire to overspend to win more to satiate your ego can be really strong, but spending a ton of money to get your hands on the best cards isn't the only way to have fun playing this game. If you can afford to do so, then that's great. I'm not here to tell you how to spend your money, but if you can't, and that urge to spend is still there, consider that money isn't a gateway to happiness in the game. The free-to-play lifestyle in some free-to-play games that have microtransactions, or in games like Genshin Impact or Fate Grand Order, is its own type of fun because there's an added challenge with working what you have, rather than simply dumping all of your funds into whatever the new broken character is. Lesson number 5. Create your own definition of success. Finally, defining your own success is crucial to changing your perspective on the game. Have you ever heard the phrase, if you're not first, you're last? I always hated hearing that phrase because it invalidated the hard work of everyone who didn't play first, but more importantly, it defined success as narrowly as possible, something that only the outcome of a game could determine, but how you win can be just as important, or even more important than the win itself. Is beating a total newcomer to the game with your cracked meta deck really winning? What about aggressively rule sharking in a casual match against friends? The concept of scrub mentality is incredibly toxic. It argues that bad players avoid popular strategies because they'd rather blame their deck than their own skill. That might happen occasionally, but I think the majority of casual players who enjoy running non-competitive strategies aren't doing so because of an inferiority complex, but instead because they actually enjoy playing with their chosen deck and cards. Winning with your favorite deck just feels so much better, enough to offset the losses that you're likely to accumulate along the way. The takeaway here is to not let anyone define your success or your fun in Yu-Gi-Oh! You own that. So if you love playing meme character decks, there's no reason to stop just because your opponents are playing more popular strategies. I've had more fun trying my hardest with Evils at a regional than the time I took Clyforts the weekend after they debuted. In one setting, I felt like every win was earned, while in the other, I felt like I was merely letting my deck pilot itself. The wrong takeaway here is thinking that competitive players owe you any concessions. There's nothing wrong with prioritizing winning above all else, as long as you're being a good sport about it. The best thing you can do as a casual player is to find settings with other players who are willing to meet you at your level. I almost always have 2 decks on me at once, one for competitive matches to help friends practice, and another for casual games in case I'm playing someone new, or when a friend wants to dust off an older strategy. The bottom line here is you should play Yu-Gi-Oh! Your way, even when the game isn't explicitly designed for it. Tournaments are set up to benefit the players that spend the most time, effort, and sometimes money on the game. And they're the most visible metric of success. That doesn't have to be how you define winning in Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament wins definitely aren't how I enjoy any other game. Anyways, that's all from me in this video. Thanks for watching, and if you had your perspective changed even a tiny bit by this video, please let me know in the comments below. Now, this game can sometimes be a bit of a frustrating experience, but it really doesn't have to be.